What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up.
So we come together to discuss how the 12 steps apply to emotional sobriety. And if you've been with us for over 3 years now, you know that we go through the steps and then we have and take another run at it in a different approach and a different angle. We've gone through several different iterations of this now. Again, all those recordings are on our YouTube channel. Lots of great content there. So our latest run through the 12 steps has been on a focus on self-esteem. And tonight we are going to continue our discussion on step 7. And Thom Rutledge will be our primary discussant tonight. And then afterwards, we'll bring in our other discussants, Roger Andes, Declan Murphy, and Brian Dunphy. So we're going to start off tonight. I'm going to drop off the screen here and add in Thom, and we'll get started.
All right, my name's Thom, and I am. I threatened last time that since I was going to be in charge and Alan was going to be away, that I was going to take this thing right to the ground, and had no idea what I was predicting. But I am tonight an emotional basket case. So, but I gave a lot of thought back and forth, and thought, okay, well. One of the things I've learned about emotional sobriety is based on self-honesty. And this is the connection to self-esteem. My self-esteem is also one of the most important measures of my self-esteem is my ability to be as self-honest as I can be. I can't know what I don't know, but as honest as I can be with myself. And so I made the decision, although I had come up with everything from just honesty, letting everybody know that I just was a basket case and couldn't do it, all the way to every damn lie that I'd ever come up with back in my drinking days. I mean, such beautiful, beautiful excuses and all kinds of things. And of course, the best lie is a good one based on truth. And so what I was going to tell you all is, and I'll share this as my own, you guys are a support group of mine, is my wife had spinal surgery on Tuesday, and a 4-hour surgery. And I'll try not to, I know there's no problem with crying, but I'll try to be sure and keep words coming out. But it's been hard. It's harder for her, obviously, because she's the one who's had her back opened up. But this is the connection I'm going to make tonight to the step 7. Is I hope I can hope this will make some sense. But it's like during this time, the anxiety that has come up with this, waiting before the surgery. Fearing that, waiting for 4 hours to do that, and when she got back and realized I hadn't watched her in pain for so long in the hospital and go through that process, it's like what I realized. I was thinking about step 7 is that step 7 says we humbly ask him to remove these shortcomings. And one of the things I've thought about the step 7 is. And I'm always talking about how we put things into practice, but step 7 doesn't involve any action other than just humbly asking. That's it. And the rest of it is the big let go. I mean, I'm talking about the big let go, the idea of not sitting around micromanaging. My tendency would be to micromanage, which I would say to God, well, why don't you take this one first? Why don't you take this shortcoming, and I'll get a few more of them organized for you to go on down there. But no, the idea there is what I understand it to be is if I'm working my practice of step 7, I humbly ask him to remove, and whatever the him is or whatever the it is, it's like I don't concern myself really with what belief systems are, and I've had many different belief systems in my lifetime, and so please make no assumptions by the use of the language of what I actually believe. But for me, it's more about my part of it, which is letting go, than it is about what I believe I'm letting go to. But the idea is, it's that what I was saying before was the practice. I believe the practice of step 7 is to do my best, to basically put that in that ask to remove the shortcomings as a default setting in my consciousness, so that it's just there, that it's not like I have to come back and ask it all the time, but that I want to live my life in a way that I am available for shortcomings, for my, whether you want to call them character defects, or I just call them sometimes characteristics, that have some negative downside, kind of shadow sides, whatever I want to call them, that I want to be open to those being removed. And so go back to the connection of what I've noticed in myself in the last few days, and my emotional basket caseness is, wow. What I realize is, as these are being removed, one of the things that's going to happen with mindfulness is we're going to become aware of them. Or I have been aware of every way that I have, dealt with anxiety, dealt with being out of control, anger, manipulation, lying to myself, wanting to lie to other people, all this stuff. I behaviorally, it's like, this is where I believe it's really good that ethics apply to our behaviors, not to our thoughts and feelings. And it's really because I have witnessed the attempt, and I'm not saying I've done it perfectly on the outside either, but it's like I have been so aware of it's like a review of my dark side, just going through these last few days. And it's just, and truth is, this level of anxiety, this level of stress just brings it up. And it's like, I had this wonderful realization, because we are working on step 7, is, wow, because I never thought about step 7 much at all. But it's now I'm sitting there thinking, no, if I'm willing, what I'm doing is I'm noticing these things, I'm recognizing them coming back through again. They're still, and the potential to do these things and to act these ways are not, it'll always be there with me. But as far as, so maybe I'm not letting it go altogether. Maybe God's not removing the whole thing, but another part of it, another level of it is being removed. And my job has been to pay attention to it and to witness it. There's a quotation from a book I'm reading right now that a client had turned me on to, called, it's Pema Chodron. It's called When Things Fall Apart. It's like everything in her, when things fall apart, like my wife's back. But there's a line in here that made me immediately think of our work on step 7, and it just says, with enormous gentleness and clarity, we could look at how weak we are, which I think is just, it's blasphemous for my old self. We could look at how weak we are. In this way, we can discover that what seems to be ugly is in fact the source of wisdom, and a way for us to reconnect with our basic wisdom mind. And it's like, this is one of the things that I really become aware of through this process with all of you, and with going through this stuff with this group, is is just the idea that wisdom is that acceptance of everything. It's not, I'm letting go. The wisdom is the opposite of conditional, is what I've been jotting down in various forms along the way today, and as when I was thinking about what I might say tonight. So, but the wisdom is just the acceptance of everything. So the acceptance of the acceptance for me today is my basket caseness, that I am, I'm a mess, and it's like, and I have all these temptations and all these ideas and all these thoughts, and I'm sure all these little behavioral, glitches that have been slipping out. I'll check with my wife later about that. She's a good witness to that. But it's not about judging myself any further. It's about being aware of that, being aware of what I'm feeling, how I'm experiencing it, including what Pema Chodron here says is my weaknesses. It's like the places where, the ways that I still have the pardon the clinical jargon, but the ways that I still have the capacity to fuck everything up, and still can do that, and might at times. I can accept that, and that's part of my wisdom as well. And so that, to me, I hope this sounds like it's a step 7 thing for the rest of you, but it has been for me, because I've been putting it into those terms. And I'll just say I appreciate being able to talk about this. If I hope there's something here that's useful to other people, but if there is, it is useful to me to be able to speak in this group, that I know I can just say what the honest truth is. It's very valuable to me that when I am a basket case, I don't know that there's ever been a time, and I mean, I can be a serious basket case. It's like there's I don't think there's ever been a time where I have just walked right into whatever it was that I had as a responsibility, and just announced myself as being that basket case, and saying, here goes nothing. But that's what I've been able to do tonight for the first time. So at the risk of feeling too good about myself, I'm going to think maybe I succeeded at some of this. And I also want to tell you, my wife is home. She got to come home earlier than they expected, which is making me nervous as hell, and I'm about to drive her crazy. And I'm saying that out loud, so I'll do that less when I get off of this meeting, because I'm just watching her, because all of my control shit has come back. I mean, it's like I am, I came home I told in this group decades ago, I came home and found that Dee Dee was reading a book on the coffee table called How to Live with a Control Freak. Wasn't a fan of that. It's like, didn't like it, but it's like it was a beginning of a major change in my life. But so I've learned a lot about that. I am a recovering control freak, and boy, have I been aware of that stuff coming to the surface over these last few days. But I am continually asking for these shortcomings to be removed, and that's what I got to say about that. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, what wonderful, Thom. Thank you. Thanks for getting uncomfortable with us.
It's a strong suit of mine.
Well, instead of making us feel uncomfortable, which is
that's all right. Well, feel free to join me, but it's like, you're not. I don't think you're going to outdo me tonight. So.
All right. Well, I've added into the screen Roger, Declan, and Brian to share in the discussion step 7. So take it away, gentlemen.
Okay, I'm happy to start, unless one of you guys is eager to do so, then that's fine too. Okay, first of all, I apologize for my voice. I know I sound like I have a frog in my throat. God, Thom, I so appreciate always, but even more so than usual tonight, man, because you are given a master class in self-acceptance tonight, as far as I'm concerned, man. No, and I appreciate the heck out of you. Really happy to hear that Dee Dee's home. And obviously, I hope her recovery goes as well as humanly possible, man.
Thank you, Roger.
Well, no, you know, I love you, man, and I know you just, your commitment to telling the truth and speaking your truth is a constant source of inspiration to me. So I just want you to know that, and I appreciate how open you're being about something obviously so important, so anxiety provoking, you know, for you in your life, man. So just thank you. Thank you.
Well, I also just want to say, and I'm probably failing at it just a little bit by saying this, but I'm trying to do better myself in terms of the shortcomings to be removed. Is when you say that stuff to me that goes right to my heart and does get in there. It's like I'm stopping myself from yes butting you about you know, like no, you need to understand, you know, how fucked up I can be. It's like, but here's the cool thing. You know, you and I haven't known each other all that long, but I think we know each other well enough to know that if I tell you, boy, I can be way fucked up, I believe that you believe me.
I do.
Yeah,
I
and
do.
so that matters to me. That
Yeah.
matters to me. So it's like, it's just yeah, that just thank you. It just touches my heart, fills my heart.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
And if I'm Dee Dee, man, even in the midst, if I'm in your position of all my crazy making, because I think I'm like a lot of us, nothing gets my control issues activated like fear, right? And the more I care about, the more I care about the person or the situation in my life, but it's almost always the person, right? The more controlling and insane I become. And it's really, it's a lot, you know, it's a lot to manage, both with internally and relationally. But I am in the midst of trying to contend with your craziness. I'm imagining if I'm Dee Dee, I'm also feeling pretty damn loved by you.
Good. I hope
You know,
so. Yeah.
Pretty cared about, especially with the awareness you have of how controlling and
ridiculous.
And
the word is
ridiculous, absurd, right? If you're like me, we can become. I mean, I have a 25-year-old son who could, you know, when he had some pretty serious respiratory illnesses and stuff as a kid. I would get so controlling with him out of my anxiety for him, I would drive him freaking nuts, you know? And thankfully, because of, you know, encouragement from people who care about me and have helped me, I encouraged him early on to start giving voice to that, right? Dad, you're driving me nuts. Stop. I'm okay. You're making everything worse, you know? And a little bit of that would get through sometimes. So I loved how you said well, I loved a lot of things you said, but how you try to make, you know, the practice of letting go your default setting. I think about that with regard to letting go, because it's so hard for me a lot of the time. I think of it with regard to humility. I think, you know, that I try to make some notion, some felt sense of humility, kind of my default setting in my life. And I never succeed, you know, and the more confident I get that I'm getting a handle on humility every time, the more I lose it, right? It's just such a paradox, whether we're talking about learning to let go and not trying to control everything as our central issue, or trying to approach life with a little more humility, whatever that means exactly. And to me, it's always changing. You know, as soon as I try to get a handle on it, I don't have a handle on it.
Right.
anymore.
Well, Roger, I just want to say that I think of you as kind of my lab partner in the experiment of in humility, because you and I have had what I would describe it is we basically have a mutual admiration for each other in some ways, and we have a tendency to complement each other's humility, which makes each of us question whether we're being humble. Because I feel really great when you tell me how humble I am, and I go
well,
like, well, yes, I am.
with,
Yeah.
with good reason, we question it. Because
Yes.
you know, we can talk a blue streak about what humility means, and we can have all these words for it, like the APA definition about relatively low focus on self and acknowledging our mistakes and lack of knowledge. But, you know, any of us can be an actor and we can mouth those words, right? And
Right.
that's what Ben Franklin, I've quoted that a lot. I cannot boast of much success in acquiring the reality of the virtue of humility, but I have a good deal of success with regard to the appearance of it. Meaning he taught himself how to say the right words, how to use understanding language, conditional language, you know, modest language, but the experience of it in an ongoing way, that's tough, man. That's tough for me. So anyway, I don't want to say more. I appreciate so much what you shared, and just how real you are, and thank you, Thom.
Thank you, Roger.
So whoever
I love
wants
you,
to,
man.
I love you too, and please give Dee Dee my best, man. I hope her recovery goes as well as possible, man. Declan, Brian, go ahead and jump in, you guys.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I'll jump in, and thanks, Roger, for jumping in first time. It's great to hear you this evening. And the moment you started speaking, what came to mind, and this is true a lot of times when I hear you, that I remember that what you brought into like my life and my program is this idea of adding, not removing. And that's really present for me, obviously, in this step, which is about removal, right? And that's really what I heard a lot valuably in what you were saying. We're really creating space for more than simply my reactive tendencies, like the ways that my self-centeredness is going to show up instantly, you know. And it's funny because
Alan always says, you know, add more, when in doubt, add more self. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, precisely. Right. And it's interesting because I was thinking about having children before you got to the piece from When Things Fall Apart. I can't remember the other book that I've also read, but where he says really clearly, like, you know, there is no lotus without mud. So like we need all that gunk in order to get to like the thing we you know we praise and we worship. But what came to mind for me is I had this experience when I was in graduate school. I had a really great friend, and like, I mean, good guy, so had my back all the time, and I really valued and treasured him for that reason. And I noticed in this evening where we're both in front of a professor who, you know, I thought hung the moon, and my needs to be special were like all tacked on this person's opinion. And he had done something really terrific and was getting rightly a lot of recognition on that. And I caught myself being so pissed, you know, in that moment. And then also started to notice, like, this feels terrible. Right. It was like the beginning of me knowing how to make space for more than just what I wanted, and to appreciate like someone else getting something I also want and value, but really don't need, and certainly don't need like all the time, you know. And like that was so important for me to notice that I don't have to get rid of that. I just have to live in an awareness with it and in relationship with it, you know. The other thing I'll mention too, because you made me think of this, is, you know, in my relationship, I've taken to naming for my partner that like, I'm really having the desire to change something about you now. And I'm going to tell you about what it is rather than like trying to do it. Like I'll just, name it and say like, gosh, this like, I'm in such worry about this. And
Yeah.
I find this to be really helpful. Now, what's preferable is when I can just sort of take care of that need and set it aside. But, sometimes it's helpful to name it at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Tattling on ourselves is a very important part of recovery.
Absolutely.
Most of us can say we don't really like tattletales as a general rule, but when it comes to telling on ourselves and our little demons inside, that's so essential for our recovery. Just tell on them.
Yes, I really appreciated what you brought tonight.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, Thom, my heart goes out to you and your wife. I hope you guys do well. So Thom taught a master class on acceptance, and I'm going to try to live it out because I prepared this whole thing on step 8. I thought we were on step 8. I thought somebody said something about step 8 last week, and so I
you're ahead of us all. You're in the lead.
I did next week homework.
A visionary, Declan. You're a visionary.
You guys are lagging it, so I had to just try to pull this.
How would he have ever figured out that step 8 would come next?
So I can kind of riff on this, or I can read this step 8 writing. What do you guys think would be best for tonight? I'm a little torn.
I think you should practice acceptance of the fact that you prepared the wrong shit. So just talk about step 7.
Just riff, Declan.
All right.
That's right.
Riff.
Well, before I riff, I wanted to add more self by letting you know that I wrote step 8, was a little torn about what to do next. But what I do love about this meeting and hearing you guys is that it helps. And it helps me live a better life and treat myself better and the people in my life better when I try to slow down and think about staying connected to them and connected to myself. And something that has helped me a lot is that number 5% that Nathaniel Brandon uses in his stems. If I felt 5% better about myself, what would I do next? And just breaking it down to bite-sized pieces. And it's the crazy part, and he wrote about this, was even when you're starting with something 5%, your answer ends up gigantic. And maybe some of that's at play with steps 6 and 7 too, letting go of defects and having gigantic shifts in your life or the rest of your day. And trying to make this more of a default position can be so helpful too. I jotted down the phrase no lotus without mud, and when I thought about my step 8 thing, it was like I got some mud and some lotus, right? There's some mud because I screwed up, but there's some cool in the writing, and then there's still lotus to spare just by riffing. And then I thought of that line that Herb shared with the group, and it was we are angels that shit. And I like that idea that there's this balance of good and difficult, of mud and lotus. And it's nice to come here to learn more about how to focus on the lotus and get that out a little bit more.
Is that an eloquent thing that Herb says? What word do we use to describe that? That doesn't seem as quite elegant,
It's candid,
clear.
Yeah, and having acceptance for the mud too.
Yeah.
So, thanks for reminding me about how much acceptance is involved in these steps and in self-esteem, Thom.
Well, and know also, Declan, that the expectations of you as we head into step 8 are going to be way high. Everybody in this whole group is going to be saying when we come into step 8, I wonder what Declan has to say about step 8. It's like so So don't think you're gonna just sit there and let us just slide by. We've all of a sudden, this is the way we do it in our culture. We've now made you the expert on step 8. And so our expectations, I'm not okay unless Declan knows everything there is to fucking know about step 8. So that's my emotional sobriety.
I'll bring in step 9 just to psych you out, and then riff again.
Well played.
Thank you, Declan. Anything else you wanted to share? That was a nice riff, unprepared riff on step 7, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. I wanted to add one more thought, since you brought it up in a relationship context, just again to tie in, step 7 to self-esteem a little more clearly. In writing about self-responsibility, one of Brandon's, if we include willingness, 7 pillars of self-esteem, we do pay a lot of attention, as Alan mentioned last week, to focus on self, and with good reason. Unless we know ourselves, it's hard to find a good place to begin with our awareness and with our attention. But I wanted to mention, it's not just concern for self, and it's kind of a prelude, Declan, to step 8, when he's talking about taking greater responsibility in our lives. One of the things he asks us to think about is, am I fully present in my encounters with others? So here we're moving from a focus exclusively on self with regard to increased self-responsibility and all the ways that can benefit us as we go through our various, at least if it's me, fits and starts with taking responsibility and avoiding responsibility. But I just wanted to mention this, especially, as I said, a prelude to step 8. Am I fully present in my encounters with others? Obviously, if I'm incredibly preoccupied with my own anxiety, I'm not particularly fully present with them, but I can be present with my anxiety and own it, like Brian said. Am I present to what is being said? Do I think about the implications of my statements, of my words? And lastly, do I notice how others are affected by what I say and do? So I just want to start to branch out our notion of taking increased responsibility, not because we are able to, quote unquote, make other people feel things or make other people do what we hope they will do, but we do have influence, right? We do affect one another. We are social beings in that way. Another aspect of self-responsibility in relationship. I am responsible for my behavior with other people, co-workers, associates, customers, spouses, children, friends. I am responsible for how I speak and how I listen, for the promises I keep or fail to keep, and so on. And then he talks about how we evade and avoid responsibility, which, again, I believe we all do at times, seeking to blame others, seeking to blame ourselves, on and on. But I wanted to tie that in, just because self-responsibility and responsibility toward others is just part of the complexity of emotional sobriety. Yeah. Okay, it's just part of the complexity of life from my perspective. And I just wanted to touch on that for a minute. So that's all that I have. Others of you, or Tom?
Yeah,
I'm good.
Thanks, Roger. Declan, I wanted to say that I experienced the same thing, but a different time frame. I think Alan dropped the fact that I was participating last week on me. Like, I forgot how little time I had, so I had no preparation. I'm like, oh, I'm good. At least I knew what step it was, but it was like, oh shit, I gotta get my thoughts together, and which means I wasn't paying attention to what he was saying, and I'm like, oh, I gotta pull that in. So, it's the same level of imperfection, which, is a whole other, beast to deal with. And that 6 and 7 helps me with the humility to get me to a point where it's like, it's a mess. It's all going to tumble out. And I love what Roger tagged on the end. I found myself over time accepting that I've imprecise language, and my words don't match my thoughts or my emotions, and I've got to, this particular with my wife, because obviously it's my most intimate relationship. I've got to say, whoa, that didn't come out right, and that's not what I meant, and let me try and rephrase it. And and versus in the past when it was more, let's say, unaware, unmindful, just kind of barrel in, double down on whatever came out of my mouth, right? Because that would have to, the alternative would be to admit I was wrong, and that's somewhere I don't want to go. So just there's lots of mud, like Declan said, lots of mud that just it's that I've learned to work with and try and grow some lotuses out of over the time. The quote is Richard Rohr's from Richard Rohr's book Breathing Underwater, because it ties in character defects with false programs and these these demands we put on life, and it says God's totally positive and lasting way of removing our shortcomings is to fill up the hole with something much better, more luminous, and more satisfying. So adding more, right? Then our old shortcomings are not driven away or pushed underground as much as they are exposed and starved as the false programs for happiness that they are. Thought that fit in nice with the concept of emotional sobriety and these false ideas and demands we put on everything.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps, that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. The first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. We're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.